Hi, everybody. Todd Harold here from the Burnt Toast Show. Just wanted to let you know that we're not going to have a real Burnt Toast show this Sunday. We're going to take a pass. We had a situation come up. I was supposed to do an interview with Scott Sherrard, the lead guitarist and vocalist, one of the lead guitarists, the guitarist and vocalist with Little Feat, who used to play with Greg Allman as well, and has done several really great solo albums, and has a great band called El Dorado Slim. But the weather on the East Coast intervened. There's a big blizzard there, and we were supposed to do our interview on Monday, and that didn't happen. We pushed it back a week. So we're pushing the actual Burnt Toast show back a week. I didn't want to just be silent about it, and I didn't want to just do a post. And I did have some things I did want to talk to you about. I hope you're digging the show so far. If there's, I'm going to try out some different approaches here in the next couple of months. I'm working on several interviews. I really enjoy doing the interviews, but I do want to keep the spirit of the radio show that I did for so long alive. I want to keep that going as well. But I mean, this is a big project, and I want to make sure that we do everything right. And I hope, like I say, I hope you're digging it. I thought since I had you here, we'd talk about some obscure albums that maybe you haven't heard yet. We'll start with, I got three of them. We'll start with the trumpeter Luis Gasca, an album called For Those Who Chant from 1972. I love this cover. I hope the light isn't glaring too much. But I love this album. It's a wonderful album. And and on the inside, you've got him and his dog, and I'm really digging that. His dog's name is Moon. Yeah, man. Yeah. So, and it even credits the dog, because the dog helped, I'm sure. But anyway, Luis Gasca was a trumpet player who was born and raised in Houston, Texas. Got a full scholarship to Berklee College of Music. He started off playing with Count Basie and Stan Kenton, Mongo Santa Maria, and Tito Puente. That's some serious trumpet chops if you want to play in those groups. And at some point, he moved to San Francisco and sort of became more of a hippie dude, and played with the group Malo, featuring Carlos Santana's brother Jorge Santana. And then he played with Santana. He was on Santana 3. And he played with the Bob Weir and the Grateful Dead as well. He did his first album in 1969 called Little Giant, the same year that he played at Woodstock with Janis Joplin's Cosmic Blues Band, which also featured a great keyboard player named Richard Kermode, who's on this album. He was also on Santana Welcome and Lotus. I believe those are the only two he's on, but a great keyboard player. On this album, it's pretty amazing. There's only 4 tracks. They're all really great. I've included the entire album in a playlist that I included. If you're too lazy to go to the playlist or just can't figure it out, I'll just talk about it. But anyway, a killer band. Luis Gasca on the trumpet, Joe Henderson on the tenor saxophone, Carlos Santana and Neil Schon on the guitars. Of course, those were the guitar players with Santana at that time. The great keyboard player George Cables is joined by Greg Raleigh from Santana and Richard Kermode, who was in between Janis Joplin and Santana at that time, all on keyboards. Lenny White and Michael Shreve on the drums. Lenny White from Return to Forever, and he'd also played with Woody Shaw and Joe Henderson and Freddie Hubbard. And he was on Miles Davis's Bitches Brew, Lenny White. Michael Shreve was the drummer with Santana. Great drummer, both of them great drummers. Stanley Clarke on the bass. I talk all the time about Stanley Clarke on the show. Stanley Clarke at that time was playing with Return to Forever. Some great percussion. Victor Pantoja, Michael Carabello from Santana, Carmelo Garcia, and Coke Escovedo, who I believe was with Santana on Santana 3, so he may have been with Santana at that time as well. And Rico Reyes also plays percussion on this album. Really great album. For Those Who Chant. I love the name of the album, too. For Those Who Chant from 1972. Luis Gasca on the trumpet. Next we have a band called Madura. Madura was going to be the next big thing. That's a cool picture. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but if you look at the back, they're pretty high up in the air, man. A lot of people were back then. This was 1973. But that's the 3 of them. And they were originally a band called the Bangor Flying Circus. And they broke up and formed this group, Madura. They got the name from the Meenakshi Temple in Madura, the Hindu temple in India, which is, people did that back in the day too. That's cool, you know. But anyway, they were they were sort of after Chicago, they were the pet project of James William Guercio. James William Guercio was the guy who got Chicago started. He was a great producer, produced the Buckinghams and Blood, Sweat, and Tears, their hugely popular album. And he used the leverage there to get Chicago signed to Columbia Records. And then he was sort of their Svengali for a while, I guess, to a certain extent. He was their manager and their producer, and that's a recipe for disaster, and it turned out not to be too cool. But his next project was Madura. And it was three guys, Hawk Walensky, David Hawk Walensky, who later played with Minnie Riperton, and he played with Rufus and Chaka Khan for several of their albums. And he wrote the song Ain't Nobody, which is a real classic from Chaka Khan and Rufus. Alan DiCarlo on the guitar. There's an interesting film called The Unfamous Life of Alan DiCarlo that you can check out on YouTube about his descent into not really being mentally healthy anymore. And then Ross Salamone on the drums. And all three of these gentlemen played on either Chicago albums around that time or the Robert Lamb's solo album called Skinny Boy that came out around that time as well. But this album, they often opened for Chicago. I think Guercio was pushing them really hard. And this album has a lot of special guests on it. Terry Kath plays bass on this. Terry Kath, the lead guitarist with Chicago. Robert Lamb plays keyboards. James Pankow, Lee Loughnane, and Walter Parazater comprise the horn section. And also Wayne Shorter and Joseph Zawinul are credited on there. That's some pretty big names and pretty unusual credits for people who didn't play on other people's albums very much, but that's what it says. They do a lot of interesting covers on this album. Dr. Honoris Causa, the Zawinul composition, that was written for Herbie Hancock and was originally on his first album, just called Zawinul. I think it was his first album. But anyway, it was an album from like 1970. They also do I'm in the Mood for Love, different take on that one. My Favorite Things and Funky Broadway as a medley. There's also kind of a Papa Was a Rolling Stone thing happening in there as well. And the old blues cover, Stagger Lee. Very interesting album. And that's included, I've got several tracks included in the same playlist that I spoke of before, that if you take the time, you can check out. And you can see what you think of this stuff. The last one that we'll talk about is an album, one of my all-time favorites, a group called Full Moon, 1972 album. This group was formed by Buzz Featon, the guitarist who had played with Paul Butterfield's blues band, the Rascals on their last two albums, The Island of Real and Beautiful World? That's not right. Peaceful World. And he had played that year on Stevie Wonder's song Superwoman off of his Music of My Mind album. Really great performance there. And he formed that band with Neil Larson, a keyboard player from Cleveland that he had met. And they became session musicians together. They were often on the same album over and over and over with lots of people who I will enumerate here in a second. They formed this band with Philip Wilson. Well, Philip Wilson, check this out. The other three guys in this band, Philip Wilson, brother Gene Dinwiddie, and Freddie Beckmeyer, were all members of the Butterfield Blues Band. I believe that all three of them were with, and Buzz, were with Butterfield at Woodstock. And Philip Wilson was originally from St. Louis, this drummer and vocalist. And he moved to Chicago and became part of the AACM, the Advancement of Creative Music, which was sort of an avant-garde group. It wasn't really a band, but it was sort of a group of people. I don't know if they had meetings, but there was a group of people, an association of people who were pressing, or who were pushing the envelope. Not pressing. You don't press the envelope, you push the envelope. But they were sort of avant-garde, and he played with the Art Ensemble of Chicago for a while. Later, after this band, he played with the Last Poets, Anthony Braxton, and Carla Bley. So this was definitely an odd thing for him, although he had played with Butterfield and done that for a while. Gene Dinwiddie, who was a great singer and writer and was sort of the MC for the Butterfield Band. There's an album that was produced by Todd Rundgren called Paul Butterfield Blues Band Live from a couple of years earlier, and most of it's Gene Dinwiddie talking in between the songs instead of Butterfield. But anyway, he played with Paul Butterfield, he played with James Cotton, he played with B.B. King, became a session musician later. And Freddie Beckmeyer on the bass. Now, Freddie Beckmeyer, Neil Larson, and Buzz Feiten later joined Greg Allman's band for a while, and they're on the album Playing Up a Storm. And there is a close association there with the Allman Brothers Band. The band Sea Level, that came out of the Allman Brothers Band, later covered Midnight Pass off of this album on their second album, Cats on the Coast. They did a great version of that. This was an early fusion thing. This was like before the Crusaders were really doing this, and before Tom Scott and the LA Express, and so many of those bands that had sort of a instrumental music, although there are vocal tunes on this, several of them, instrumental music that featured the guitar and the saxophone and had a certain vibe to it, groove stuff. The special guests on this album, Airto Moreira on percussion, the great bass player Dave Holland, who played with Miles Davis and was a band leader himself for a very long time, and Brandy Brecker on the trumpet. Later on, Buzz Feiten and Neil Larson went on to play with Greg Allman, as I mentioned, the Brecker brothers, Bob Dylan, Aretha Franklin, Ricky Lee Jones, Al Jarreau, Chaka Khan, Kenny Loggins, Bette Midler, Olivia Newton-John. Buzz Feiten does the solo on Physical. David Sanborn, James Taylor, Etta James, Dave Weckl, and Leonard Cohen. So they got around a lot, and that's just a few. But this is a really terrific album if you ever get a chance to check it out. I've included it in the playlist that I've got here. I want to reiterate that we don't have a show this weekend. This is all you get this week. And next week I've got new releases. I've got a playlist of new releases. I found a lot of cool stuff. I'm sort of, it's too bad we couldn't work this out for this week, but that's okay. So this is the stopgap. This is not an episode, but I hope that you check out this playlist and it sort of gets you through till next week. I'm really looking forward to my interview with Scott Sherrard, and I hope you check that out next week. And if you want to go back and check out some of the old episodes, just go to our YouTube channel and hit playlists and just click on one, and I'm sure you'll dig it the most. So this is Todd Harold, and thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.